All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Greetings, all. I am excited about our remote location where we are joining you today. It's very special. It's a technological marvel that we pulled off. And among the people who've helped pull it off today with a couple of key corrections to everything that we've been doing. Tony, who is on...
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, he's on board. And Kim, of course, is here.
Kim, how are you?
And that's all we need, believe it or not, to have an insanely packed show with discussions of the latest in the way of an attempted assassination of a former president. I mean, this is panning out to be not only legitimate, but yet another person with a grievance who takes it to the place that you can take it in the United States of guns, which is with an assault-style rifle. And he shows up on the Trump golf course. And AP is breaking some news that I'll share with you in just a moment, because I think as we look at this, we evaluate, well, is this a victory for the Secret Service because there was an interdiction here, or is this a failure on the part of the Secret Service because it happened right there at the Trump golf course? Now, I'll give you more on that as we continue here. And the news that I just got from AP was that the guy who was there with his gun setting up shop, and he had a whole deal there, didn't he, Kim? He was quite well established. I mean, he had everything but, thermoses with him, but he did bring, stuff.
Yeah, he had a lot of
stuff. He was there for 12 hours lying in wait for the former president before a Secret Service agent spotted him and opened fire. He, of course, ran, and then he was arrested. But it's interesting that this Ryan Wesley Routh, who's 58 years old, and he'll face charges of possessing a firearm. He had a prior felony conviction. You're not allowed to possess a firearm once you. But again, as I've told you, in the United States of guns, people... I'll put it this way. If you want a gun, it's easy to get. He scraped off part of the serial number, which is making tracing the gun a little bit more difficult. And more serious charges, I would guess, will be leveled along the way here. But that he spent 12 hours there lying in wait, now you have to lean what? Secret Service fail, even though there was an interdiction? Secret Service, once again, in a pretty tough spot when it comes to actually explaining what happened.
Well, it's the Secret Service said over the weekend, they don't have the staff to treat him like President Biden. So they're giving him more staff than a presidential candidate would get, more than a former president would get. And that means they only had the manpower, the people power, to look 2 golf holes ahead. Right? They couldn't scout the entire place. You have President Biden going to a place, they go the day before, or the week before, they're looking at everything, right? Allegedly. And in this particular case, they could only look 2 holes ahead. Well, it seems like if you had one assassination attempt, that maybe then you start doing a lot more than just this. Because this man came within 400 to 500 yards from Trump. That's too close for call.
Well, it just seems odd to me that you need to sort of re-clear the area every time the president is playing golf, which is most of the time, the former president. The 2 holes ahead thing, okay, so you're 2 holes ahead. That's fine. I'm good with 2 holes ahead, I guess. I mean,
well, it worked. They
but
caught him.
it actually did work to clear that area. But it's I mean, frankly, that somebody could lie there with a gun and just sit there for 12 hours with a gun, it's disturbing. I get that it was secrets. When the president or former president comes through, it's likely that you'll run into Secret Service, but the reality is that no one should be able to lie there with a gun, regardless of what they're shooting at, When you talk about a tough course, I mean, you got to dodge bullets while you're trying to, hit a par 4. What we heard was early on is that it wasn't actually a an assassination attempt. We heard there was gunfire. Of course, as it turns out, it was the Secret Service firing at this guy. But we just heard early reports that there was this popping sound. You know, Kim, that's what the people reported, a popping sound.
Right.
And many of the Trump supporters who were there around Mar-a-Lago said that popping sound is barbecue that's being prepared to cook the nation's dogs and cats, which I thought was a little. They're really pounding that narrative.
They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets.
So we have something on that today, because that I thought was comical in how ridiculous it was. Let me just put my credibility glasses on.
A lot of people commenting on your light, airy location this morning.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, thank you. I thought people would comment on my credibility glasses, which yes, thank you.
Yeah.
The reality is this joke, this dogs and cats, they're eating our dogs and cats thing, it's turned into a real thing. Meaning it hasn't turned into a real problem. It's turned into a real issue that has, it's turned into a real fake issue that has created problems for this community in Ohio. Yeah. And as I told you when it first hit, and we still were playing it for laughs because it's so absurd. I mean, it's absolutely comical. I said the one thing that we should keep in mind is that this actually is an agenda item that they want you to pay attention to in MAGA land, and that's essentially the immigrant issue. And however they've got to get you talking about it, they want you talking about it. They want you thinking about it. And so even though this is absurd and it's laughably crazy to bring it up in a debate the way he did, the continued ripple effect and the J.D. Vance doubling down and then Trump doubling down the next day gets you talking about this immigrant issue. And that is an agenda item for them, a top agenda item for them. And then I meant to share this on Friday. Kim beautifully grabbed it and reminded me that we need to run it. And I want to run the Pete Buttigieg comment on this. And then I'll get back to the assassination and a couple of things that we know about this would-be assassin. But as this issue had dominated the headlines over the weekend and conversations over the weekend, even as new polling has come in, and I'll share you the new polling. The polling is bad for the GOP, okay? Even though everything is happening around the edges, the polling is bad for the GOP. And I don't just mean Donald Trump. I mean other GOP races, okay? So, down ballot races, if you want to think of them that way. Anyway, Buttigieg essentially said what I was saying. But I thought he said it, as usual, more articulately and in a more focused fashion. So here's a little bit of Buttigieg and what he said.
This is a strategy, and there's even more to it than demonizing immigrants, although that's obviously part of what he's doing. This is a strategy to get us talking about the latest crazy thing that he did, whatever urban legend he amplifies. Right now, it's about people eating cats or geese or whatever, because he cannot afford for us to be talking about his record. He doesn't want us talking about the fact that we lost manufacturing jobs on his watch, even before COVID. Which is why the United Auto Workers are against him. He doesn't want us talking about the fact that his main economic policy promise he actually kept was to cut taxes for the rich. He doesn't want us talking about how he demolished the right to choose in this country, that he's the reason that even IVF could be banned in many places in this country. The last thing he wants us to do is to talk about his record or his agenda. So what he wants us talking about is whatever crazy nonsense he can thrust into the center of the internet and the media conversation.
And that's just brilliant. And honestly, that takes it to another level of clever, crazy like a fox type stuff. You know what I mean? Where it's not just about getting them to, meaning voters, to talk about this immigrant issue. It's about really getting them to talk about things and focus on things that aren't associated with my, Donald Trump's, record and my own inability to do the job. So I thought that was really an improvement, if you want to think of it that way, on my analysis, which was associated with getting people to, focus on this immigrant issue. But sadly, this Haitian community has been put upon in so many brutal ways now. I mean, they've been overrun. They've had to close government buildings there. They've had to shut down basic business in schools and, as I say, in government institutions there in this small town. Isn't that right, Kim? I mean, they've really had everything's been
locked down,
thrown onto its side. Yeah, they've been locked down there.
There have been some, on the positive side, there have been some pictures posted of people in Springfield going to Haitian restaurants that are in this area they're trying to support the people, saying, you know, we know this is not true. We're here for you, type of thing, and supporting their businesses. So there is that. But this whole thing, this target on the back of this small community seems pretty unfair. To what you were saying before, though, imagine that you were able to control the conversation that America is having, that you're able to have that much power over what we're talking about every day and what we're thinking and what the memes all over the internet are. Like, all of this whole national conversation, we're talking about what you want us to talk about. That's powerful.
You're right. You're right. It's tremendous power. And, you know, he's good copy, Donald Trump, but he also says stuff that is outrageous, and that takes good copy to another level. And you're right. It helps dictate the conversation. There was another piece of video I wanted also to get to. We have, what do we have, Tony? Remind me. J.D. Vance, is it, or... What do I have?
Said over the weekend, we it doesn't matter if we know it's fake, right?
That's right. Okay. That was a weird thing to say. Hey, you know, the only way I can get you in the media to focus on something is to make up stories occasionally. So run a little bit of the Vance thing, and we'll talk on the other side.
Once you stop Kamala Harris's open border policies, you've got to do something with the people who are already here. And I think that you take a sequential approach to it.
He was asked how
you are
to
going to
deport
have
all
to
those
deport
people.
some people. If you're not willing to deport a lot of people, you're not willing to have a border when there are 20 million illegal aliens in our country.
10 to 15 million people, this is like, I mean...
Well, John, I think that's the wrong attitude to take of it. Okay,
so you go knock on doors and ask people for their papers,
again, but
what do you do?
I think this is the wrong attitude towards it, right? There's 20 million people here illegally. You start with what's achievable, you do that, and then you go on to what's achievable from there. I think that if you deport a lot of violent criminals, and frankly, if you make it harder to hire illegal labor, which undercuts the wages of American workers, I think you go a lot of the way to solving the illegal immigration problem. But look, President Trump is absolutely right. You cannot have a border unless you're willing to deport some people. I think it's interesting that people focus on, well, how do you deport 18 million people? Let's start with 1 million. That's where Kamala Harris has failed, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, in other words, you don't know how. You're just making it's absurd anyway. No one wants to deport 18 million people, 15 million people, even 10 million people. There is much of the economy that depends on a lot of these people. As we know, there is a back and forth on this that ignores a real factor in the U.S. economy, which is associated with immigrant labor. Talk to Central Valley farmers in California. Talk to slaughterhouse owners who essentially populate the slaughterhouses with those who are, you know, in this country undocumented. But there are a lot of people who are here who are documented, who are legal. I mean, a lot of these Haitians that he's going after are here legally, and yet he's concocted this stuff about the Haitian community. And he's saying, and he said this over the weekend, quote, this is from J.D. Vance, if I have to create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do. And again, these are unsubstantiated rumors about immigrants. He says he's hearing it from his constituency. I watched the whole interview he did with Dana Bash. It was about 20 minutes in length over the weekend, and he pivots. He'll say these are, you know, 911 calls, and then she'll say, well, I looked over 18 months of 911 calls, and there were no 911 calls, save one that was a report, and it was unsubstantiated of the sort of thing that you're hearing. So it's a lie that there were 911 calls.
I guess it doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. It's what we want to tell you matters. Yeah.
And she asked, can you affirmatively say now that it's a rumor that has no basis in evidence? And he says, and this is sort of his typical reflexive response. Dana, the evidence is the first-hand account of my constituents who are telling me that this happened. And then he goes on to say, the American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. And you know what? He's not wrong about that. This has become this, but he's not wrong about that, but there's a perversity to what he is doing and saying that is very disturbing, because you've essentially victimized an entire community of immigrants, of legal immigrants, on the back of this ridiculousness that you've concocted. It's really wrong. I mean, it's heinous, you know. So that's that for now. Kim will continue to update us on this guy who they've arrested. I told you he was there at the golf course for 12 hours, and there will be bigger investigations into the Secret Service. One thing you should just know before we leave this aside, and we can certainly revisit it in the chat and all these other ways. You'll watch the chat a little bit more today, because I can't really see the chat and see it with this rig and where we set up. I can't really see the chat and refer to things that are happening in the show. But what I wanted to mention before we leave it is that there have been an increased number of threats to local and state officials, federal officials at all levels, all three branches of government. You can imagine cops registered many threats and continue to register threats against lawmakers. After the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband in 2022, they started to protect congressional leaders and their families in greater numbers. The political climate is scary in America right now. So the U.S. Marshals Service has been seeing serious threats against, who they're supposed to protect as judges, okay? So they're now trying to step up their ranks, the U.S. Marshals. And these federal judges are now experiencing threats that more than double the threats of last year, for example. So this is really a period during which heinous rhetoric and the increased heat around political rhetoric and violence and potential violence is stressing law enforcement. And so when we say, well, they ought to, because you'll hear this out of the GOP right now, that Donald Trump ought to receive, the same kind of protection that Joe Biden receives, et cetera. They already have stepped up substantially the protection, both for Trump and for all of these other officials of U.S. government, public servants that we talk about. So threats against judges rose to 457 from year to year in the last year, according to data from the Marshals Service. Serious threats against prosecutors went up, rose to 155 serious threats in the last year, from 68 the year before. Yeah, 68 to 155. In its latest annual report, the Marshals Service highlighted how it's responded to threats against federal judges involving criminal cases that were leveled against Donald Trump, and protected the special counsel. Jack Smith, as you know, has been enduring all kinds of threats as well. So all of this is happening in an environment which is far more charged with potential violence than ever before in this country. Now, to the craziness associated with the election. I say craziness because there is a bizarro strategy that's being pursued. And I wanted to share a couple of pieces of strategy with you. Tony, do I have my, let me just see what I have here.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, yeah, I have that. Okay. I don't know how that sounds, but I have it.
A bit low.
I wanted to share a poll or two. Can I do that? Are you up for a poll? Am I still connected?
Yeah.
Everybody's still there?
I'm here. What do you want to do?
Yeah. Poll me.
There is an ABC News poll, a new one, and this one is worth looking at. A 14-point swing for Kamala Harris. The ABC News Ipsos poll reveals that her dominant debate performance and perhaps Taylor Swift's endorsement, is what they note here, might have had a 1-point short-term effect on the polls, but there is a 6-point national lead that Kamala Harris has now opened over former President Trump. That is outside the margin of error, okay? Voter preferences haven't moved meaningfully, say the pollsters, but this poll finds the race 51-46, Harris-Trump. Among all adults, 51 to 47%. Among registered voters, 52 to 46%. Among likely voters, 52 to 46 among likely voters. Each is within a percentage point of its pre-debate level in this ABC Ipsos poll. But I suppose, and again, you throw out the national because it's not really the way we do elections in this country, but it is a sign, not always a determinative sign, but a sign of momentum and things that can carry. The Des Moines Register's latest poll, in June, Trump led Biden by 18 points. Harris has narrowed that margin to only 4 points. That is in Des Moines, Iowa, and this is in the Iowa run-up to Election Day. Trump almost 20 points ahead of Biden. Now Trump down to 4 points. Trump won Iowa by 8 points in the 2020 election against Joe Biden. It's worth noting. This poll may be catching newly energized voters, they suggest, who thought they would sit out the election this time when the June poll was taken. But now, with Kamala Harris in instead of Biden, with the debate performance being impressive, the new Des Moines Register Mediacom Iowa poll is showing that she's closed that lead. Trump still leads Harris 47 to 43% among likely Iowa voters, but that's a far slimmer margin than the huge lead that Trump used to have. In the late spring, as I say, it was close to 20 points. So you can make what you want of these polls. I think they tell you a little something, especially if there's a swing like that. So it's for that reason that I note these polls along the way. I think it's worth spending a second on them. Trump was asked about what's happening in Springfield. You have that, Tony, don't you? He was asked about the bomb threats in Springfield. He was asked about what's going on in Springfield, the tumult, in a sense, the social tumult that has been produced as a result of this ridiculous dogs and cats crap. And it's the real world effect of his words, as you were saying, Kim. You were kind of noting how he can affect talking points. He can affect real life. Here is Trump's reaction to the bomb threats in Springfield and those threats to the Haitian community. No? Yes?
Maybe not. Here it is.
Do you denounce the bomb threats in Springfield, Ohio?
I don't know what happened with the bomb threats. I know that it's been taken over by illegal migrants, and that's a terrible thing that happened. Springfield was this beautiful town, and now they're going through hell. It's a sad thing. Not going to happen with me, I can tell you right now.
So he doesn't really know what's going on, doesn't know about the bomb threats, but he knows that the town is, the town is in bad shape. And, used to be a great town, now it's, right. The problem with this ridiculous cartoonish crap that he serves up is it really does nothing to address real issues. If you really cared about what was going on in Springfield, you realize the way in which the immigrant community there has actually lifted that town in many ways. And then, to be fair, you could talk about the ways in which any community, including Springfield, is stressed by the influx of people. So you could talk about healthcare, and you could talk about schools. You could talk about these institutions that can be stressed when you have an influx of immigrants of one sort or another. But that's really not what they're doing. They paint a cartoonish picture that suggests the immigrants come in and everything's gone to crap. That just isn't what's happened. I mean, I tell you, if it was, I've got no weird allegiance to that, to the notion that you should just open the borders. Nobody in America, including any Democrat, wants open borders. You have to manage your borders. But as I say, this ridiculousness with which they pursue strategies to have conversations about this, absolutely counterproductive to be polite. You saw that, Kim, I'm sure you'll have it in your news. We're still looking at a possible government shutdown. Mm-hmm. Mike Johnson is trying to get this extension. I mean, literally, this is a Congress that can do nothing. GOP has control of Congress. All they can do is build their personal brands, threaten shutdowns of the government. And when it comes to basic government funding, they can't get it done. They're trying to attach it, as is their right. They're trying to leverage it to concessions they want around voting. But he can't get a basic passage to keep the government open. It's crazy. It really is crazy. So that's what's happening in Washington. Meantime, the former president, Kamala Harris, I don't think is doing anything today that I can, in terms of campaigning. She's doing some local interviews. We told you about this last week. She's doing some back and forths on radio and television with local outlets in various swing state communities. There's something going on that is really, really nasty, and it's going on. And this is when you talk about the swift voting of John Kerry. You talk about the kind of oppo research that's done in various political campaigns. You talk about the advertising blitz that's associated with negative campaigning can be so very effective. This is a twist on all of that, and here's what it is. Anti-Semitic ads about Doug Emhoff, right, Kamala Harris's husband, target Muslim voters in Michigan. So there are a lot of Muslim voters in Michigan, active community there. They feel let down by the Republicans, certainly, but by the Democrats as well. The ad campaign in the state of Michigan, funded by a group that appears tied to Republicans, seems intended to remind Muslim voters, this is from the New York Times, of Kamala Harris's pro-Israel view and her husband's Jewish faith. The tone of the ad is celebratory. This is the twisted, perverse nature of it. So the tone of the ad is, look, isn't this great? Congratulations. Doug Emhoff, the narrator says, would be the first Jewish presidential spouse ever. A super PAC that appears to have Republican ties targeting Michigan residents, including those in the Detroit area, zip codes that are home to many Muslim Americans and Arab Americans. There are YouTube advertisements that are highlighting Vice President Kamala Harris's support for Israel and, in some cases, the Jewish faith of her husband, Emhoff, Doug Emhoff. The narrator, again, notes his religion. An image of the Israeli flag appears on screen, which is a dog whistle, and it's an anti-Semitic trope like crazy, which is the notion that Jewish people have a greater religion to Israel first and then the U.S.
Sure.
And here's the line. Kamala Harris is a strong leader for these difficult times, and joining Kamala will be her husband and top advisor, Doug Emhoff, the narrator says, right?
Who says he's her top advisor?
Thank you. It's absurd. It's not true. So as this narrator's talking, images cycle across the screen of Emhoff wearing a yarmulke, visiting Oscar Schindler's factory, lighting Hanukkah candles with Ms. Harris. Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff, the narrator says, making history, standing up for what's right, supporting Israel.
Wait, just last week, weren't they talking about how she doesn't like Jewish people? So what is it?
No, Trump. What you're talking
Either
about?
we do like him, or she doesn't like him.
What Kim's talking about, of course, is that Trump is saying, if you're Jewish, there's no way you can vote for Kamala Harris. You have to vote for me, because if you care about Israel, which again is the trope that like somehow the Jewish people in America care more about Israel or Israel first. It's absolutely anti-Semitic. It truly is. But I mean, at a year with a lot of anti-Semitism that it comes veiled and less veiled. But this PAC called Future Coalition PAC has run 6 advertisements, 3 of which deal explicitly with Doug Emhoff's faith. Others focus squarely on Kamala Harris's support of Israel. So they're blasting away in Detroit and Michigan, where there are huge Muslim Arab communities, hoping to make inroads with that community and essentially wedge themselves between that community and a vote for Kamala Harris. It's it's another level of underhandedness. It's really kind of scary. Elon Musk, meanwhile, writing about threats to Biden and Harris and how come people are attempting to assassinate Donald Trump, but no one's trying to assassinate Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. I mean, it's an incredible thing. Can you imagine Elon Musk? He runs the platform X, and so this X/Twitter becomes a platform on which he can not only say these things, post these things, but he handles the algorithm. So he's able to essentially force feed us all of this stuff. So hours after what the FBI called a second attempted assassination of former President Trump, Elon Musk wrote on his social media site, then he deleted it, a post suggesting it was odd that nobody had tried to kill President Biden or Vice President Kamala Harris. Mr. Musk, of course, said, as the New York Times, the New York Times calls everybody Mr. Mr. Musk said that the post on X had been intended as a joke. Now, again, these guys have a really sick sense of humor, but that post has been taken down, and Musk continues to ride herd over what is really a negative blast that Harris and Walz are receiving on the X platform for the most part.
What is that? Is that like something? Are you trying to say? Is he trying to say that, of course, Trump was attempted assassination is because he's more popular? What?
No. I don't think it was thought through like that. I think it was simply, I think it was, honestly, so you're saying as a joke. No, it's indefensible. I don't know. I mean,
I don't even know what the thinking is behind that. Well, there's been no assassination attempt against the Democrats, so we must not like them as much. Well, people try to kill you when they don't like you. So how does that make sense? I don't know. I mean, it's asinine regardless, but just like I'm trying to understand the thinking behind that statement, and there isn't any.
Yeah, doesn't appear that there is. So tell me what is going to happen now? We're going to go to Kim's News and then Gary Dietrich, or how does it work?
We have Gary Dietrich standing by, I think.
Oh, Gary's ready? Okay, great.
Yeah, maybe we should go to him first.
Do you find my credibility glasses lose something when I'm this far? I mean, I'm in this new remote environment. This is a Kim question, probably. Do they work?
Could go either way. Yeah.
Either way, okay.
They do work.
I may put them on and take them off alternately. When I feel.
Can you see better with them on?
Well, of course, but I can still see with them. Yeah. Well, you know, now you're talking like a mother. Okay. Well, but I asked.
Mark Thompson Show.
So, this guy is so generous to spend time with us. This is a political season unlike any other, and he is a political analyst unlike any other. He was on KGO radio for years. Now he's across the CBS television stations as their political analyst, also on iHeart Radio and iHeart Media. How about it for the great Gary Dietrich, everyone? Yeah. Hello, sir.
Mark.
Another weekend, another apparent assassination attempt on somebody running for president. I mean, it's really quite wild. Give me your thoughts.
Well, I think, for one thing, let's just start with the most important thing. This is exceptionally disturbing, okay? I don't care who the candidates are. I don't care what their political affiliation is. I don't care what their ideology is. The notion that we're going to have our presidential candidates targeted for assassination ought to really shock people. I mean, truly. And I don't care who you are, how you plan to vote, whether you plan to vote, what party you are in Congress. But, you know, I guess one has to say enough is enough. Now, what do I mean by that? I think one of the key things out of this, Mark, is certainly and must be a recalibration of protection for candidates. This has gone on over the last year, most notably for RFK, who requested on multiple occasions over the last year, look, we're receiving threats. We had one individual show up at an event. They didn't give him any, you know, he was having to pay for his own private security detail. And they were going back, what they were hearkening back to, Mark, was, well, this is the way we've always done it. Well, you know what? As the guys in, you know, law enforcement say, we are in a new threat environment, Mark, and the old rules are simply not adequate. So what do I mean by that in the current circumstance? You know, the Secret Service has now come out and said, were this to be President Biden, we would have literally encircled the entire golf course with security. But we didn't do that in this case. We used the resources that we traditionally have, which is a hole or two in front of Trump on the golf course, and a hole or two behind him is what we are able and traditionally have provided, and that's what we did. So this wasn't a failure. I think this is important to note. I'll end with this. This was not a failure on the part of traditional Secret Service methods, but what it was the lack of a recalibration of where we currently are in the political environment and the threat environment. And it's now clear that, and there's been calls for this from both sides of the aisle already this morning, we have to provide everybody, including Trump, with enhanced security in the current threat environment. That's it.
And it's not just Trump, and it's not just these high-profile candidates for president, Gary. I was mentioning before, U.S. Marshals reporting threats to federal judges are up. They're twice, in some cases even a multiple. I was reading, 3 times what they were year to year, and members of Congress as well. We saw what happened to Nancy Pelosi's husband. I mean, so it does feel as though it's a violence-charged kind of rhetoric and political environment these days. As you say, it's different than it used to be.
Yeah, well, exactly, Mark. And so you even had Biden today and yesterday saying, look, we need to provide even more resources to the Secret Service. Again, I want to be really clear. There's no ding on the Secret Service procedures today, unlike the evaluation of what happened in Pennsylvania. That report is to come out, and you may have heard last week that the ranking Democratic member on that report committee said it's going to be shocking to the public when they hear some of the breakdowns, some of the failures. Okay, that's not the case this time. This is about resources devoted to security. And to your point, Mark, we've had Supreme Court justices who felt threatened and actually had people at their residences. Now we're at federal judiciary, members of Congress. I mean, I just think we are in a new world, and there's going to have to be enhanced security presence across the board, across the political spectrum, unlike we've had in the past.
Now let me ask you a cynical political question. It seems as though from the last attempt, the actual shots fired to this attempt, that the degree of sympathy or the whatever, political gain, again, that Trump might have gotten from this it didn't seem to show up in any kind of measurable way. I mean, first of all, I would ask you whether that's indeed the case. But secondly, if that's true, this is a weird way to put it, but kind of a political sideshow. It doesn't really affect the main event.
Well,
I mean, I'm sorry to term it that way, but yeah.
Yeah, yet to be determined, Mark. I mean, I think, for one thing, because these events have been happening on the weekends, and this one was just yesterday, I really think some people are literally just finding out about it. Some won't even find out about it till tonight or the next couple of days. That's part of it. The other part of it is that the shooter apparently did not fire any shots. What happened was, according to early reports, that a Secret Service detail saw the muzzle coming through the fence of this AR-15 weapon that this guy was brandishing, who, by the way, if people haven't heard yet, left it at the scene with a GoPro camera that apparently he was going to record his efforts, and 2 backpacks. That was all dumped when when Secret Service actually took shots at this guy. I mean, started firing off rounds. So apparently he did not get off a round, and maybe that has something to do with it, Mark. But I'll tell you, I even hate to sort of frame this in political terms because it's so egregious, to even attempt to do it. But I guess your basic bottom line question is, will Trump benefit from this politically? I don't know. And frankly, to be blunt about it, I don't care. Right now, what we have to do is say, Trump, Harris, RFK, judges, members of Congress, whoever they are that needs security, needs to get it, period, end of story.
Sure. What I'm seeing, and that's a fair response. I mean, it's interesting because everything that, I think that's a fair response, full stop. But I will say that former President Donald Trump has played the assassination, the last one, was it 5 weeks ago, whatever it was, he's played it for a lot of different things. Political benefit, I would also suggest for commercial benefit. He sold, as you'll remember, sneakers that were the special assassination sneakers. And I mean, he put together a merch collection almost overnight based on it. So I'm going to say what used to be some kind of off-limits sort of question related to politics and how one might exploit something like this, an incident like this. All of a sudden, I feel a little bit better about asking a question like that in the new environment. Now, here's what I wanted to tell you. Somebody says, I disagree, Gary. He has plenty of protection. His team is just getting complacent. There are not enough agents to deal with other folks. It is true the agency is stretched, but do you feel essentially, hey, man, I don't care how stretched you are, you need to step it up and essentially break more dollars loose to protect the president, even the former president, even more than he is?
Yeah, and look, this isn't just me speaking. There's no indication of complacency on the part of the Secret Service detail for President Trump. There really isn't. Now, we're going to get a detailed report of the Pennsylvania incident, and I have absolutely no doubt, and we're already hearing it today, that committee is now going to take this incident and put it under the microscope, as they should in Congress, as they should. And what will come out of that, my strong indication is already preliminary indications. There are going to be changes in protocols out of the Pennsylvania incident. I mean, so, you had, we talked about this before, you had multiple agencies. It's not just Secret Service. People don't understand this. There's other federal agencies, ATF and others involved. There are state agencies, i.e. Highway Patrol involved. There are local law enforcement agencies. All those are being scrutinized out of Pennsylvania, that incident, and they will be here. But all indications are that there simply was not enough security at the Florida golf course to be able to spy this guy out early. And they've already talked about where the whole location was, that there's a major thoroughfare running beside that there's bushes and simply a chain link fence, and that there just weren't enough resources to find this guy. I mean, you would think if he's got a muzzle pointed through the chain link fence in the bushes, you could spy this guy out if you had security walking down that fence line, right? They said they weren't able to have those kind of resources. I'm not going to be the final arbiter of this. Congress and the internal investigation is going to be, but early indications are that was the case.
I like that you mention more than just the Secret Service, because people who are regulars on this show and who listen to this show or watch this show regularly know that I haven't been kind to the Secret Service. I think they have a troubled history. I think they've been dining out on protecting presidents, which is kind of the way we see them, the heroic work they do, protecting public officials, and that is heroic work. But the agency is troubled, and if you Google Secret Service scandal, you can read all about everything from hookers to drug deals to, I mean, they ran a brothel out of Latin America, okay? I mean, this is an organization that has great people associated with it, and people are doing heroic work, and then people who are toxic and are corrupt. And so I don't know where we end up in terms of the actual work that's being done day to day, but it's more than just the Secret Service. That's what I was getting to. You so beautifully point out that it's all of these other agencies that work with the Secret Service to try to protect these public officials, and they have to be involved in whatever conversations moving forward are developed to protect and improve the protection around public officials.
Yeah, and I think that house cleaning that you mentioned as needed, Mark, in the Secret Service is going to happen. I have absolutely no doubt. I mean, we already saw the director at the time after Pennsylvania resign under that heat, under that pressure, right? And I think there's going to be, I have no doubt that members of Congress are going to be on this thing over the next 6 to 12 months. There is going to be a house cleaning. I have no doubt about that. I don't care who wins in November. I think the Secret Service is, as they say, the gig is up. And I think that it's going to be a thorough evaluation of resources, of person power, of protocols, and even of personalities and individual persons. And if people have a troubled history and they got to go, I think they're going to go, because we simply, here's the bottom line for me, Mark. Can you imagine either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump or current sitting President Biden or anybody else being actually assassinated during our election cycle, what that would do? I mean, I think that would be horrific on a scale that we can't even imagine for our own politics, for our international perspective and perception. And that, geez, they can't even protect their own candidates. I mean, our allies and our adversaries. I think this has to be shored up, and it has to happen quickly and thoroughly.
It is interesting, Eric points out. Wonder how the would-be shooter obtained his weapon. If only there was some kind of federal background check that might have flagged his status as a known felon. It is true that, as a felon, he's not supposed to be able to acquire this weapon, Gary, but that's not getting a lot of oxygen right now.
Well, he's got a long, when all the details of this come out, Mark, this guy has a lengthy rap sheet. That stretches back a long ways. Ironically, he was interviewed by the New York Times, I guess, or the Washington Post last year. He's been involved politically. He's been anti-Trump. When this all comes out, there's going to be a lot of question marks again about how does a guy like this, A, get the weapon, and then B, point it through a chain link fence at one of our two presidential candidates. It boggles the mind in some ways that this is actually was possible over the weekend.
I'm reminded in the chat of something that is true, which is that when president, and by the way, it continues now that he's no longer president, Donald Trump charges the Secret Service the full retail rate for staying at his clubs. And oftentimes, and by the way, that's just the price of doing business. But he was, when he was president, bankrupting essentially the Secret Service, as you know, because he was not sure it was the way it was going down, whether or not he was going to be staying in Mar-a-Lago, whether he was going to go to Bedminster, whether he was going to go even over to Scotland. And the Secret Service had to reserve and pay for rooms in all those places just in case. So Donald Trump has played fast and loose with the way he's allowed the Secret Service to essentially feather his bed. That's just Trumpian. I guess we kind of just accept it now. But it's an interesting relationship, might be a way to put it, that Trump has had with the Secret Service.
Well, I think that relationship has evolved very rapidly over the last 6 weeks, Mark. And, he's speaking very, very highly of the Secret Service, but everything. The expense accounts, everything. You pointed out, your suspect charges that some Secret Service agents were making for, you mentioned the activities. I think top to bottom, man, there's going to be no escaping an amazingly thorough vetting of the Secret Service. And I think importantly, those affiliated relationships that you and I have both referenced going forward.
All right. So now let me take you to a poll. I know this is not necessarily anything that we can put great faith in, but that's why I ask you. The Des Moines Register's latest presidential state poll in Iowa might be something to look at. I was mentioning to people in June, Trump was ahead of Joe Biden by 18 points, Gary. But Harris has narrowed that margin to 4 points. This is in a deep red state. Trump won Iowa by 8 points in the election against Biden in 2020. And I'm wondering whether or not, I don't know. So it's 47 to 43% among likely voters in the state of Iowa. Again, this is from the new Des Moines Register poll. As we try to read these tea leaves that feel as though they have to in some way point to what's happening around the edges, because I feel like that's where this election is going to go down, is there anything to draw from this deeply red state and these new poll results?
Well, that's difficult to say in a broad sense. I will say this, Iowa is not in play. I don't hear any noises at all that the Harris people are going to drop a single dime extra into Iowa. They don't believe that that's a place they're going to be able to play. These numbers go back and forth. I think you can certainly say, we know this for a fact, across the board, every state, Harris is polling better than Biden did. That was just, that was cataclysmic, as you know, back there in June before the debate for the Democrats and for Biden. Now, going forward, I think we have to go back to ground zero, which is those 7 battleground states. And this is a remarkable statement. There are right now, it is so close in those states that you cannot, most of them are being won or led, that's air quotes here, they're yes people, by less than 1 percentage point, Mark. Now you got Georgia leaning more Trump. He's at 3 or 4 points there. You got Wisconsin, the same for Harris. But if you look across the board, there was an interesting statement. I think it was made by Nate Cohen in the New York Times today, who said, hey, listen, if you take the battleground states, you cannot, if you just take the states and you take out the states that are less than 1 percentage point, in other words, you can't attribute them to either candidate because they're a point something. He said, nobody gets to 270. Nobody. All right. Take out those less than one. And he said, and that has never happened in modern polling. So that's how close it is, Mark. And I think the next week we'll get some more polling done in those individual battleground states after the debate last week. Those will be very important. And we'll get some more. And those are the most important, of course, because the national polls will have no impact per se on the Electoral College. So
sure.
in another week's time, Mark, we should have a lot more data points on those battleground state polls, and we'll see if those have moved, both after the debate and potentially we'll see if this weekend's assassination attempt moved them in favor of Trump in any way, shape, or form.
I'll let you go here in a minute, but I'm just curious also about down ballot races and other races that aren't top of ticket. This presidential stuff can distract us to the point that we ignore Congress and the Senate. Can you speak to that? Because I'm seeing that some down ballot races, even among the GOP, they are lagging. Trump has a 9 percentage point lead in Ohio, for example, and Sherrod Brown is leading by 3.5 percentage points.
Right.
So speak to the general state of the races that have to do with Congress.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. And I think let me just zero in real quick in the limited time we have on a couple of them. Okay. So the most significant one right now is the Montana Senate race, okay? Sitting incumbent Tester against his Republican challenger. Right now, the incumbent, the Democrat, Tester, is behind by about 7 or 8 points. That is significantly concerning for the Democrats because it's assumed by both parties that West Virginia is going to flip with Manchin dropping out, the incumbent Democrat, then independent, dropping out. That's going to go Republican, all right? That gets them to 50-50. All right. And if Republicans pick up Montana, it's 51-49. And everything after that is gravy. Right. But that race right there is the pivot point for control of the Senate, which, of course, is absolutely vital because that's the confirmation house for SCOTUSes, right? For federal judges, they are the brakes. Whatever the House does, the Senate, with its current ability to still filibuster and et cetera, and have one member hold up a vote. That race in Montana right now may be the single most important down ticket race there is. And that's the one everybody's watching very carefully.
And as you say, the Democrat is behind. The incumbent is behind. Yeah.
Right. And that is also a state that, of course, Trump won by double digits, and everybody expects him to do the same again. Tester has survived a couple of previous races, but that was always something of a long shot. You can look at the Ohio race for Senate, the Pennsylvania race for Senate. All those are in play. Surprisingly, the Maryland Senate race is now more in play than people thought it was going to be. Deep blue, that's more in play. But that Montana race is the pivot point right now, Mark.
Do we have a piece of video we want Gary to look at, Tony, or not? No? No. Okay, good. I just want to make sure I didn't leave anything on the table. Gary, love your takes. What a bizarre, I feel like every weekend, we talk to you on Mondays, and I feel like every weekend has gotten more bizarre. You throw in an assassination attempt and this ridiculousness with the dogs and cats. I mean, do you think this dogs and cats thing, has become a fact, regardless of how it was birthed, because I think it was birthed as a falsehood, okay? I mean, based on everything I'm seeing, there were no 911 calls complaining about this. There were no pets stolen. There aren't dogs and cats it's just not true, okay? But it's become this thing, talking point. Again, it seemed like a joke, but now it's become, there are real life consequences, right, that are happening in Springfield. My question to you is political, which is it a distraction? Is it to refocus on immigration, even though it's a perverse way to do it? How do you see it?
I think, honestly, Mark, it becomes more of a comical meme. There goes Donald again. I will tell you this, a lot of political observers are already saying today, those things pop out when we don't have big things to focus on, like another assassination attempt. I think this, what happened yesterday on that golf course in Florida, take out the old eraser your teacher used to use on the chalkboard and start erasing, right? Because that's going to take a lot off the table. And then later this week, when we get more of these larger polls and these battleground state polls, I think the dog cat thing is going to become a distant memory, honestly, Mark. I mean, we have 50 days until the election. I guarantee you there are other big shoes that are going to drop. Who knows what they are. And they're going to make some of these smaller things look minuscule by comparison. Evidence of what I'm talking about, what happened on that golf course yesterday in Florida.
Right on. Gary Dietrich, you can see him across the CBS television stations and across iHeart Media on iHeart Radio. Love our Mondays with you, pal. Thank you so much. Gary Dietrich.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Yeah. Right on. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wow. It is these are bizarro times. Let's get an update from Kim. There's all kinds of stuff going on. I was encouraged, Kim, to see that the fires in California now have some signs of containment, right?
Things are getting better. The weather's kind of cooperating a bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm hopeful that that continues. Anyway, but that's just one of the stories that Kim will be following. Smash the like button like a boss. It helps us. And again, if you ask me to tell you how it helps us, I really cannot tell you how. But I'm a newcomer to this as well. We love that we are picking up some momentum on YouTube. But to be honest, all the algorithms and how they play, I don't know how it works. But I do know that your support is so very appreciated. I think I got a couple of emails I want to share with you too, and I'll do that on the other side. Did I bring my smash the like button? I thought I brought a smash. Hang on a second.
Smash it with your iron rod, perhaps?
Yeah, I thought I brought a smash thing, but maybe I didn't.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
There it is. I did bring it. Okay, smash it and
put that coffee down.
And there you go. All right, Kim's news, and we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. President Biden says there is no place for political violence in America after there was another alleged attempt on former President Trump's life. Speaking at the National HBCU Week conference in Philadelphia this morning, President Biden said America has suffered too many times from violence against political leaders, and it does nothing but create more problems. The president said our differences need to be solved at the ballot box, not by a gun. This comes after a man allegedly tried to assassinate Trump while he was playing golf Sunday in Florida. That man, by the way, is now facing federal firearms charges. 58-year-old Ryan Routh was charged with 2 felony counts during a brief court appearance today in West Palm Beach. Florida sheriff's deputies arrested him a short time after a Secret Service agent spotted Routh with an AK-47 type rifle at that West Palm Beach golf resort. Meanwhile, court records show that Routh was waiting to shoot at former President Trump's golf course for 12 hours before this event unfolded. The federal criminal complaint filed against him says his cell phone was in the vicinity of the area along the tree line of the golf course beginning at 1:59 a.m. on Sunday. Federal prosecutors are expected to bring more serious charges surrounding a possible assassination attempt in the coming weeks for Mr. Routh. Elon Musk says his X post questioning why President Biden and Vice President Harris haven't faced assassination attempts like Donald Trump was just a joke. Musk deleted that post Monday morning, which read, "And no one is even trying to assassinate Biden-Kamala?" with a thinking face emoji. Musk kept the post up for several hours before deleting it. He later added, "Turns out jokes are way less funny if people don't know the context and the delivery is in plain text." 2 colleges in Springfield, Ohio, are moving now to remote classes this week following threats of violence. Wittenberg University and Clark State College are the latest forced to shut down after a series of threats connected to debunked claims of Haitian immigrants. The claims about immigrants in the community stealing and eating pets were pushed into the national spotlight last week by former President Trump and his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Speaker Mike Johnson still immersed in this government funding fight. The government shutdown deadline is at the end of the month. So far, no consensus, though. Meanwhile, Trump is putting his foot in the race, telling Republicans that if they don't receive absolute assurances on election security, they shouldn't pass a funding extension. This as Trump continues to sow doubts over election integrity in the run-up to the 2024 elections. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the latest investigation into his dealings with wildlife was part of the weaponization of our government. Kennedy was at an Arizona campaign event. This was Saturday for former President Trump. He told the crowd then that he's being looked at for collecting a whale specimen 20 years ago. His daughter told Town and Country magazine in 2012 that her father cut a whale's head off after it washed ashore in Massachusetts. Apparently, the National Marine Fisheries Institute sent a letter to NOAA, urging an investigation, which is now underway. Kennedy has previously acknowledged he dumped a dead bear cub in New York City's Central Park over a decade ago. The weirdness continues.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes things are so bizarre that even though they're 20 years old, they do deserve another look. That's all I'd say.
In California, a wildfire is leaving a bigger path of destruction than first thought. The number of homes burned down in Orange and Riverside counties, it's up to 115. That number, though, will likely rise as teams continue to assess damage. The airport fire started accidentally 1 week ago today by crews using heavy equipment to prevent access to dangerously dry brush. It now tops 23,000 acres. It is expected to be fully contained next week. Progress being made on 2 other Southern California wildfires thanks to some cooler weather. The Line Fire in San Bernardino County is nearing 39,000 acres. It's almost half contained now, though. 3 structures damaged. There's a delivery driver accused of starting it September 5th in the city of Highland. He'll be in court today. This is the week to weigh in on California's insurance crisis. Have an opinion? Make it known, because there's a virtual public hearing set for tomorrow at 10 a.m. Homeowners, businesses, local leaders can give input on new plans to reform the insurance market. The state has been working with companies to have this ready by the end of the year after several providers stopped offering coverage in California. Online comments can be submitted anytime before that meeting. In San Francisco, leaders are considering whether to ban overnight parking for RVs. It would apply to all streets managed by the city between midnight and 6 a.m. The Municipal Transportation Agency could then tow any oversized vehicle that's in violation after offering people shelter. Currently, only one designated safe parking site at Bayview Hunters Point. Homeless advocates are calling for more, saying it's a better step than an outright ban. There are final preparations underway for one of San Francisco's largest conventions of the year. Dreamforce runs tomorrow through Thursday. More than 45,000 people slated to attend. That's a busy week for hotels and restaurants and businesses. Experts predict the tech conference will give San Francisco nearly $93 million worth of an economic boost. As for traffic, 2 blocks around Moscone Center are shut down, as always.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Vice President Kamala Harris now has an ice cream named after her. Ben & Jerry's has created Kamala's Coconut Jubilee. It's a new flavor in support of the Harris presidential campaign. Kamala's Coconut Jubilee is described as a coconut ice cream with a caramel ripple and confetti stars. It's branded under Ben's Best, not the traditional Ben & Jerry's. The ice cream makers have partnered with a progressive organization, Move On, which will be raffling off free pints of that ice cream during Scoop the Vote. It's a tour that kicks off Monday in Philadelphia. They didn't make one for Trump. They only made a Kamala's Coconut Jubilee.
I thought they made one for Bernie Sanders, too. Didn't Bernie have a Ben & Jerry's? That's what I thought.
I think so. Yeah, I think they did way back when. I forget what it was called, though.
Yeah.
Oh, Google it. I don't know. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Oh, I've got the hibiscus iced tea today. Did you travel with your Coachella Valley coffee?
I did not travel with my Coachella. It's funny. I made that realization yesterday morning. I thought, oh man, I really miss my coffee. But I know there are people who travel with the whole rig, and I should be one of those people, but I'm not.
My husband does that. Drives me crazy.
I mean, if it's really the great thing that you do and starts your day like that, I understand doing it. I just,
You just want your same coffee. You don't want the, he's like, there's no way I'm drinking hotel room coffee.
Right.
I'm drinking the coffee that I want to drink. Otherwise, I'm not drinking it. So, okay.
And this coffee at Coachella Valley Coffee is the very best coffee I've ever tasted. As you know, those were regulars know and have even tried this and agree. I get so many emails. They've gotten emails, but CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is where you can go and try it for yourself. I mean, there are all kinds of tasting notes. There are different grinds. There are different blends. There are different roasts even. And it's all spelled out for you. So hopefully you'll get the bean that you like. It's all hand roasted. Everything there is done in a real top drawer way and in a boutique-y way. So this is not some, huge industrial place. This is a place that really has products with you in mind and with taste in mind. So again, teas, coffees, etc., all organic and from women-owned farms. They do such great work. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. But the key is when you go there, use our discount code, because I want everybody who sees this show, even if you're just floating through, to get that discount. Mark T at checkout at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, and it's 10% off anything. It doesn't have to be coffee. It can be tea. It can be merch. It can be anything you get on their site. So check it out and use the discount code Mark T at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on, everybody. We are on the road. That's why this is can we stop it, Tony?
Do it again.
I don't know.
One more for the show.
Do not understand what happened, Tony, on that. That's an outrage. I will write it up, and it'll be an item that will.
It's a setting in the road. That's I think repeat instead of latch or something like that.
Oh, really? Let me hit this, and I'll try to. I'll change it right now.
I don't remember what the right terminology is, but it's what it is. Yeah.
We can't do the whole show with this playing in the background. That would be crazy.
I mean, we can. I don't know how many people will endure it.
You're probably wondering what this music is playing behind us. We just haven't been able to figure out a way to turn it off. Is the problem? Yeah, it's just weird. So now you'll find that you'll tune it out after a few minutes.
Oh no! Turn it down.
All right.
Oh no.
Oh, my God, that's funny. All right. To me, it's funny.
There's
there it
Bernie's
is.
yearning.
That was Bernie's. That's right. So they had Ben & Jerry's had the Vermont senator there in their list of flavors you could order. Ben's Best, Bernie's Yearning. Thank you for finding that. Really great, Tony. Nice job. And I would play the Thanks Tony, but I would have to play that bed, which is running continuously, that music. Spencer Jaffe, thank you for a $2 super sticker. Big shout out to you and thank you. And Spencer, with a $5 super chat, says, I play with video strategy games. I don't want to hurt anyone. Yeah, I mean, there is a quality of these first-person shooter games and all the rest. I don't know. I mean, you can do a lot with gaming. You don't have to actually break out these weapons and do any damage. The CIA had brothels in San Francisco, says Rampage Radio SF with a $5 super chat, when conducting MK Ultra experiments in the early 70s. Well, I have no doubt that, first of all, if you really want to have a conversation about the CIA, I'd be happy to have that. The CIA is essentially an unaudited and untethered organization, and I'll probably, this may be my last show as a result of saying it. I mean, but it is no surprise that an organization with minimal oversight and with maximum license is able to do what they do. So when you, and I'm talking about not domestically only, but worldwide. I mean, obviously, that was the original intent of the CIA, was sort of to operate internationally. But when you tell me that they had brothels in San Francisco, I don't know anything about that, but I don't doubt it. So in the early 70s. Jim Slayton, the Secret Service went to hell after Pat Thurston left. Exactly. Pat used to be a Secret Service person. Now, she wasn't and thank you for the $5 super chat. She wasn't a protection officer, so she didn't run alongside the car type thing. But she was in the Secret Service. Secret Service does a lot of stuff with currency, a lot of stuff with counterfeiting, that kind of thing, as you're aware. Sandra Thomas, come on, Sandra, thank you with the super sticker for 10. I love it. And I would give you the big shout out, which I thought I had, but we have, maybe I can give it to her. Hold on a second. You can tell we're not really, we're in this we have this rig that we're just kind of getting to.
Do we have a thank you, thank you, thank you?
And yeah, we do have something. We do have a thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I have a thank you so much, which I love. And I retroactively want to give the big shout out to all of you who've been so generous today.
Big shout out.
And somebody wrote me about the big shout out. And I think I told you about it, Kim, didn't I?
No.
Maybe I told Courtney, because it was so, it struck me as so remarkable that somebody would write. They said, essentially, and our email address is themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. Hey, RFK Jr., stop. I'll continue my thought in a second. Just this is on screen, so I'll take care of it. Hey, RFK Jr., stop being a freak, and there will be nothing to report on. Hello. That's from Luis. Thank you, Luis.
Big shout out.
The email was essentially, Mark, how much do we have to contribute to get rid of the big shout out?
Oh, no.
Big shout out.
So that big shout out, for those who don't know, that is Dan Ashley, who's a big anchor in the San Francisco Bay Area on the ABC station there, KGO TV. We were KGO Radio, and he filled in for me when I was away with KGO radio show. So among the things he said was a big shout out to whatever. And he said a bunch of things. He said, Albert, thank you.
Albert, thank you.
And he said, big shout out. So we took the big shout out on the Albert, thank you. I think those, we might have taken a couple other things, but those are the things that get the most oxygen. And so that's why we use it. So, did I acknowledge, just speaking of shout outs, a new Patreon member, Joan Hollywood.
Oh, that's fancy.
It really is. She is a $20 a month supporter, and I so appreciate it. That is deserving of a British thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joan. Welcome, Joan. That's really cool, and I'm excited. I saw that and was, again, just really, really excited that you are a new member of our community. And every time somebody contributes anything and sends a message of any kind, she said, so happy to finally become a member of the Great Mark Thompson Show. And she did it on Friday the 13th, she says, a very lucky day. So welcome, Joan. Really appreciate that. And Kathy and Gary just edited their Patreon membership from $10 a month to $15 a month. So that's really a big shout out. And thank you so much. And lastly, I just want to mention, and again, we're crowdfunded, so you'll allow me this indulgence to just acknowledge those in the crowd who do a little funding. I believe Lori went from a $20 to $25 a month member in Patreon. I say member, supporter. I mean, it's not a membership per se, but it really is. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Speaking of Lori's, it was Teacher Lori's birthday, so a happy belated birthday to her.
No, Teacher Lori is a very big supporter, and she supports with information and participation. She's like really hits us with a lot of articles, and she's kind of almost like a little shadow producer Calvin Wong kind of person. And then finally, a last thing, and then I will move on. Kathy for a $5 a month supporter in Patreon, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes, really cool, Kathy. I try not to use last names, and because I don't want people to get, you know what I mean, unless they say it's okay. But we will, Tony updates the scroll, so everybody who is part of our Patreon community and our PayPal community, all added to our scroll at the end of the show, because literally without you, the show doesn't happen. And so every show is something that you're responsible for, and I appreciate it. So Tony once a month, he adds everybody, so he will definitely get it taken care of. And Tony,
thanks, Tony.
Thank you. All right, so let's. I'm looking through my. Where's my?
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan.
That's not what I was looking for, but I love that.
People don't leave my rallies.
No, he has the biggest rallies. I don't understand why they focus on his rallies.
We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
I mean, they really are strong rallies, you know.
Doral happens to be within
okay.
Miami.
Okay, there you go. Anyway, at these bizarre times, he is a bizarre candidate who is doing something truly bizarre that has never been done by any candidate in the history of the United States of America. And I'm about to tell you what
We've
that
never
thing.
seen- never
We've
seen
never seen
anything
anything
like
like it.
this.
We've never seen thank you. Never seen anything I've ever seen.
The Mark Thompson Show.
So, Donald Trump was to be poised today. I mean, it was scheduled to be today. Now, it may have changed because of the incidents over the weekend and I think you have to call it an assassination attempt. It was funny. It was mentioned in the chat, like, why are you calling it an assassination attempt? The guy never fired a shot. Well, I mean, he's lying in the brush waiting for 12 hours. I think it was a plan to assassinate a former president. I mean, it did look that way. But that said, I think the events of yesterday may have thrown this off schedule, although Trump is addressing a group of people right now. I was just seeing he's on the stump. And Joe Biden addressing a group of people today as well. But the thing that, again, was planned and looks like maybe it will be carried off with some kind of announcement does come from the former president. But it includes more than just the former president. It is a new crypto venture. It's called World Liberty Financial, and he is set to unveil it today at Mar-a-Lago. Now, this is going to be a venture managed by his sons, Don Jr., and I have some news about Don Jr. that I'll get to a little bit later in the show. It's kind of saucy, gossipy stuff, and I kind of like it. And Eric, of course. So those two, Don Jr. and Eric, are promoting this as this decentralized finance move, and it's this world of crypto that gets you away from traditional banking and into this world that you are by now familiar with of cryptocurrencies. So the Trump family has been active on social media in recent weeks anyway, promoting this World Liberty Financial, and they call it the future of crypto, okay?
How is this allowed?
I mean, it's got more sharp edges in terms of conflict than I can even, but the Trump family and Donald Trump himself was always filled with conflict, meaning conflict of interest in one way or another when it comes to the nation's business. And it was reported on widely before he got into office. Before he was elected president, it was clear that with his holdings and with all of his different business ventures being what they were, that Donald Trump would have any number of conflicts. So when you say, how is this allowed? It's, it has to be, it's allowed because he's allowed to do a lot more than traditional candidates have been able to do. The platform is going to be managed, as I said, by his two sons, but add to it now Barron Trump, his son. He's an 18-year-old student at New York University, and he is going to be part of this venture as well. So, again, this is the word from Trump that tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock on the West Coast, will be the launch of World Liberty Financial. And this is, to use his words, an embracing of the future with crypto and leaving the slow and outdated big banks behind. So here's where I think you run into problems. When he starts talking about the big banks that way, there are government watchdog agencies that are already saying if elected, he might use federal resources to support personal financial ventures, all right? And CREW, the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics, are saying now that it's not a problem to take a pro-crypto stance, but if you stand to profit from it, then taking that pro-crypto stance as president could very much get in the way of things. So again, right now, no issue. But Trumps have provided limited information, they say, on how the platform will function. Crypto exchanges typically serve as venues for investors to buy and sell digital currencies, operating similarly to traditional stock exchanges. The one thing I would just add to that would be the world of crypto is oftentimes a world that is filled with, and I'm not saying that Trump is, but I'm saying that the world of crypto is, with payments that are deliberately outside the banking world. Think drugs, think armaments, guns, think dark web. Now, again, that's not to say that the world of crypto isn't filled with people who are just trying to make an honest buck and they're involved in the arbitrage associated with crypto. But it's clearly true that these crypto exchanges, they push a lot of money back and forth, and it can be used in any number of ways to support terrorism, gun running, and drug smuggling, just to be blunt about it. So Eric Trump has said the startup will promote financial independence. And according to a published white paper about this particular fund, the platform's token distribution will be structured with 70% allocated to company insiders, surprise, and 30% available to the public. So as long as we're talking about arbitrage and betting, again, I'll remind you of something that started on Friday and it's continued. Vice President Kamala Harris's chances of winning the upcoming presidential election have surged on the Poly Market exchange, where you can bet on the outcome, essentially, and people are buying and selling. Think of it as the future market on Trump and Kamala Harris. And so Trump had led for much of the Biden months. But now, I don't know what's happened now. Was I thrown off?
No, you're still here.
Okay, still here. All right. I'm still working with the new technology. Sorry about that. Anyway, this Poly Market exchange is quite extraordinary. And Kamala Harris has now surged ahead of Donald Trump, and Trump had been ahead for all those Biden months that they were trading, and now it looks as though, and by the way, I believe before the debate as well, Trump was slightly ahead of Harris. Now Harris ahead of Trump. So again, all of these things are happening on this day. You can play that arbitrage. You can play this new cryptocurrency that the Trump family is offering up to you. But one way or another, it looks as though the kind of political season we're in is unlike anything that we've seen before. There's never been anything like it. I can't believe I don't have my never been anything like it loaded in here, Tony. How is that possible?
You feel really kind of naked without it.
I know. It just isn't. It just isn't.
We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
Yeah, it's true. He's got those big rallies. There's no question about
There's
it.
never been anything like this.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Did you all talk about the Trump's threat to Governor Newsom in California, or did I miss it? Says Rosie Lala. What was Trump's threat to Governor Newsom, Kim?
Trump is threatening to withhold federal firefighting aid. He is blaming Governor Gavin Newsom for everything, for all of the fires. He's laying the blame at the feet of so-called new scum, he's calling him now.
I see. Yeah.
A lousy governor who he said declined to sign paperwork allowing more water to be diverted to farmers in exchange for federal funds being sent to the state to put out all the fires. He said, this is Trump, I said, Gavin, will you sign? It took him a month and a half or 2 months, and then he decided for political reasons, and then he said we got hit with COVID, and so we had to solve another problem. Meanwhile, Governor Newsom says Trump admitted that he will block emergency disaster funds to settle political vendettas. So basically, in the time of need of the state of California, Trump turns it into a political fight.
Well, that's an extraordinary thing that he said. The last thing that you just quoted, you're saying he will withhold funds. Say it again. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing to hear a public official say that he would withhold funds essentially, as a recriminatory act. Go ahead. What did he say? So
Governor Gavin Newsom on social media says Trump is admitting that he will block emergency disaster funds to settle a political vendettas. And Governor Newsom went on to say today it's California's wildfires, but tomorrow it could be hurricane funding for North Carolina or flooding assistance to homeowners in Pennsylvania. He said Donald Trump doesn't care about America. He only cares about himself.
Well, he's right. I mean, the Trump administration, the 4 years that he was in office, he did that. It was really a red-blue world to him. So that's why so many people were trying to ingratiate themselves to him. You really had to play the Trump game very carefully. Otherwise, you would screw your state over. And that when we go back to COVID, that was something else that was talked about, was sort of like if you had an in with the Trump administration, you were going to get the PPE that you needed and a lot of the COVID-related gear. It became this Hunger Games thing where you had to sort of state by state work to get that PPE. You'll remember it was so poorly handled. And that was really a ding. Trump's been allowed to skate from it. It was really a ding on his administration. But one of the aspects of it was to somehow ingratiate yourself to the former president, and in so doing, you'd basically up your possibilities of getting the feds to do something for you. Go ahead.
Perhaps I'm really naive, but I think this is the first time I've ever heard of, I don't know if this is the first time it's ever happened, of politicians playing political games with natural disasters where their lives are at risk, their houses have burned down, their businesses have been torched, and you're talking about political games and not helping fellow Americans. What's interesting is that the California professional firefighters over the weekend came out and said Trump should be ashamed for threatening to withhold federal firefighting aid from California. So the firefighters union, at least in California, is coming out against Trump as well.
Well, I recall that we did this dance when he was president. You'll remember they don't rake the forest enough. They don't handle things. And he was an expert on how to manage the lands in California, and it had to be explained to him that most of that land is managed by the federal government. It is not managed by the state of California. He has sort of leaned into that once before with California, with Newsom. Now, oddly, Newsom and Trump had a pretty good relationship during the time that he was president. It was a weird thing, and I give Newsom credit for being able to navigate that somehow. But there's no question about it that Trump plays it in a naked political way that we are really just not used to seeing. There's always some politics involved in a lot of this, but let's face it, I mean, this is on another level. The first graders who survived Sandy Hook, they will vote in their first presidential election. That's how long ago Sandy Hook was. It is a moment that many are talking about. 12 years after 26 first graders and educators were killed in that shooting, they will vote in their first presidential election in November.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a huge turning point in our lives, said one of them who's 6 years old when a gunman killed 20 first graders and 6 educators at Sandy Hook Elementary. An activist at the time, of course, thought that tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut might become a watershed moment and produce legislation, and now we talk about it as a watershed moment in terms of our realization that if they wouldn't produce legislation with that kind of massacre of 6-year-old kids, of elementary school kids, and we still couldn't get any movement, this country isn't moving on it. I mean, now, really, that's what we talk about it as. It was truly a cornerstone moment in a bad way. Not only was it this profound tragedy, but it was also a profound message that this country is not changing course. So, and as you know, there are these assassination attempts, and these wackos show up with these assault weapons to these Trump rallies or to the Trump golf course. I think, well, left out of the conversation, as I mentioned to Gary Dietrich, is a question about guns, right? All we talk about is the incident itself. We do not get into the actual cause, which is the proliferation of guns in America. So, meantime, where's my, this is my thing, Tony. I need my sting, but it needs to be hotter, you know?
The Mark Thompson
This
Show.
isn't hot enough, I don't think.
Yeah,
I need
that's
to
way
re-record
low.
it or something. Yeah,
we got to do that one
It
over.
sucks. Yeah, we got to do. Sorry, guys. One of the levels may be a little funky today because of this remote. Tomorrow, Kim, David K. Johnston, pretty big show tomorrow, and then Wednesday as well. The first time I'll be back, I might be back for the Friday show. We'll see. Anyway, but so glad I could be with you today. But sorry that the levels are a little funky. I did want to mention it's a weird relationship that has emerged between Laura Loomer and Donald Trump. She is, as you know, calls herself a proud Islamophobe. She was banned from a lot of social media platforms, but she is tight with Donald Trump. And an online video, Trump praising Laura Loomer as terrific, very special. You're a very opinionated lady, she said. He said, I have to tell you, and in my opinion, I like that. She's 30 years old. She's a Florida activist. You know, we've mentioned her in glancing ways for months, but now she's taken center stage because she is right alongside Donald Trump, and she's a true hook, line, and sinker conspiracy theorist, and she's filled his head with conspiracy theories as well. As I said, she calls herself a proud Islamophobe, and she has spread conspiracy theories about the Parkland shooting in Florida. She's spread conspiracy theories of all sorts. She's called Muslim savages, etc. She was endorsed when she ran for in the primary in Florida. She was endorsed by Donald Trump. It was in 2020, and she won that primary, but she lost the seat in the general election. So she's been linked, I should say, to Nick Fuentes, just to give you a sense. He's a white nationalist. As you know, he sat down with Donald Trump for dinner, along with, was it Kanye West, right? Or Ye, as he was called? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they were all, as you know, at dinner. It was a big white nationalist dinner, you know what I mean? Again, Loomer is a key part, it would seem, of Donald Trump's entourage. Now, what's being talked about, and he's 77, she's 30. What's being talked about is that there might be some kind of other sort of relationship. The two of them, they seem, I don't know. Can you tell anything from body language, Kim? Do they seem
touchy-feely?
Yeah, exactly.
Lovey-dovey?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
She says, thank you so much for inviting me to sit with you today. It's a pleasure. You're the best. I love you. She said that on camera.
Maybe she's a hugger. You know, you don't know.
Yeah, she could be a hugger. It's true. But she's a big Trumpy, and he's a big Loomery, and so the two are hanging out together a lot.
I guess the question is, does it really matter? I mean, listen, from the grab him by the pee all the way to the you know, what was her name? Karen someone, the Playboy bunny, to the porn star, Stormy.
Karen McDougal, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we know that he cheats. He's a cheater who sleeps around. So is anyone surprised that he starts hanging out with this lady and more, you know, questions arise? But no one cares. If no one cares that he slept with a porn star or a Playboy bunny, then who cares about a conspiracy theorist?
Yeah, I should say, I don't care whether he slept with so you're talking to somebody who doesn't care. I don't care about a Playboy bunny. I mean, he can roll around. He can sleep with every pilot and co-pilot on his flight. He can sleep with every flight attendant, whatever. I don't care. I don't think I'm not the sex police, and I'm not the relationship police, and I don't think anybody should be. But I don't know what Melania's up to. I don't care what Melania's up to. So
can you imagine if Kamala was cheating? Like, it would, Lord have mercy.
Yeah.
No one cares what Trump does. He gets a pass for everything.
No, I think that's a fair point. I mean, there's definitely a double standard. The reason she's of significance is because of her insane take on reality. I mean, the conspiracy theorists are large in number enough to affect the dialogue, but when she's right next to the former president and he really has a shot at holding the highest office in this country, and he's had his head filled with this stuff, that's a different kind of relationship. Again, it's not, I don't know what it really is in terms of their intimacy or whatever you want to call it, but to the physical relationship. But I would, what concerns me is that this guy could be making this. He already knows so little. He knows about essentially marketing himself and branding various policies. As you know, he's also, just to digress on that, he's serving up all kinds of policy proposals. He's floating them out there, like not taxing overtime and, as you know, not taxing tips. These are things that will never pass. There'll be no kind of formal legislation to in any way get this on the books, but it's a great talking point for him, and he's making tremendous political hay with it. And all of a sudden, we're talking about these things as though they really had a chance, and they don't. So, again, to the extent that he talks about this stuff as a legitimate well, with any legitimacy, I think we have to be concerned that Laura Loomer is his, muse, if you want to think of her that way. So, if you Google Trump assassination attempt fundraising, you will see how he was soliciting within hours. These attempts are literally gold for this guy, says Louise. Wow, I didn't see that. That's extraordinary. Extraordinary, and yet, as I was saying to Gary, I mean, it's just like we know it to be the case, that he'll try to use everything for fundraising purposes and also for political purposes to raise his political his political. I'm just.
They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets.
Yeah, I know. There it is. So
it was a weekend full of memes about the pet thing.
Yeah, even the dog here is bumming about this conversation. It is true.
It was a perfectly timed dog barking.
It's as though that was a drop, but it was not. Yeah. I have news from. I feel like we've done all the gossipy stuff. So can I digress? Can I just get away from Trump for a second to mention two things?
Didn't you tell me there was some type of Eric Trump gossip you wanted
Yes,
to tell
I'm going
me?
to save it. I will give you the Eric Trump gossip in a moment. Okay, I promise I'll give it to you. But I just want to step back from the Trump for a second. First of all, Tito Jackson passed away, brother of Michael Jackson. He was 70 years old. He was one of the founding members of the Jackson 5, guitarist. And he was, any other notable, anything else we can say about Tito? I know Tito well. I don't, I mean, everybody who wasn't Jermaine, LaToya, or Michael, was not really, But his sons posted to Instagram, and he was a founding member of the group of 5 brothers, the Jackson 5, along with Jackie, Jermaine, Marlon, and Michael. They shot to fame in the late 60s and 70s, and they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He is there with them, and he was prevented, Tito was, from playing guitar on Jackson 5 records in favor of session musicians. He later launched his own career as a solo blues musician in 2003. So if anything, I always say that, when somebody passes away, you find out so much from their obituary that you didn't know about them to start with. Sometimes, I look at the obituaries, as you know, and not in a dark way, because I'm so fascinated by these people who I don't know, who had these amazing lives, and you learn about it reading it. Anyway, in this case, we know the Jackson 5, we know Tito, or perhaps know the name, but I never knew that he was essentially nixed from all these hit records, and they just used session musicians instead. So he played when they went out live, but that was it. Yeah, that's just a wild fact. And then there is this from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I mention this because, as you know, we are a show that came out of the San Francisco Bay Area originally. And now I'm seeing Tony. I don't know if it's going to let me log in. God, because it's a new computer. Well, this is a story that can wait. If I can't, I don't know what's happening now, Tony. I blame you, Tony. Who? Do I have the I blame you? Where's my I blame you? I'm just getting.
Oh, it's a shame you forgot that one, huh? That's a damn shame.
I blame you.
There you go. I blame you. Anyway, there's a. I'll tell you. I'll just tell you what the story is because I read it earlier. So in the San Francisco Bay Area, pickleball is like this big deal everywhere, and the San Francisco Bay Area is no different. And we came out of this radio show that was in San Francisco. That's why we keep a sharp eye on a lot of things going on in Northern California and the San Francisco Bay Area. So they have this pickleball thing, and there was a pickleball dispute among rich people that lived in, I think it was a few residences. They lived in the Presidio or somewhere close by. Well, there's a
fancy neighborhood.
Yeah, super fancy neighborhoods. Everybody is.
They didn't like the noise from the pickleball courts in the park. And then it turns out the lady that was complaining has her own private pickleball court on her own property.
Thank you. That's exactly it. So here it is. Pickleball's bombardment of noise. Rule breakers and fence climbers at Saratoga courts lead to $100,000 soundproofing and lock costs after a neighbor complains. So they're having to soundproof the pickleball courts, and I'll tell you that's just the beginning. The 100,000 might be a low number. I saw $300,000 as a potential price tag to totally soundproof it. They're saying, hey, we can develop, and they are developing pickleball that is less noisy than the pickleball that right now the world is dealing with. But
it's the grunts, right?
Well,
like
no.
Every time you...
No, it makes a sound every time you make contact.
Oh, okay.
Well, there's that too. It sounds like you might be grunting more than I don't know. I don't know.
I thought that was the pickleball way. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe the.
I blame you.
All right, I could be a grunter too. I don't know. I try not to grunt too much. But the other thing that I thought was extraordinary, and it's also in the Bay Area, and it's also related to pickleball, is there is a community that because of the pickleball controversy and because of the radioactivity associated with pickleball is considering, and this is a high-end community, they are considering outlawing pickleball in their community.
A pickleball ban?
That's exactly right, a pickleball ban, and it is in Ross, which is in Marin County, right? So there are pickleball courts in some of the surrounding communities. But Ross is sitting down with their city council or whatever, trying to decide, do we want to ban pickleball in this community of Ross?
You know, I think pickleball is beneath us. I can hear that at the Ross City Council meeting.
The question about pickleball and Ross reminded me of the early days of snowboarding. So this is what you get when you get me. I'm old enough to remember when there wasn't really any snowboarding. We were all skiers, okay? And then snowboarding came along, and it looked to me to be the coolest thing ever. Okay, I just thought, oh my God, I wish I could do that. They look like they're having so much more fun than we are. So the snowboarders came in, and they were viewed sort of as intruders, okay? Like, why, they're not skiers. So the reason this becomes really pertinent is there were certain areas, certain ski areas, that wouldn't allow snowboarding. They were like the community of Ross looking at the intrusion of pickleball on their peace and quiet. And so the last place where you could ski and there were no snowboarders, and the idea was the snowboarders, they cut across your path, the fall line, and they're creating all kinds of accidents, and it becomes more dangerous. Skiers don't like them. It was Aspen, Colorado, sort of the apex of, high altitude, she bouginess. They wouldn't allow it. But I believe they finally relented, I want to say just a few years ago, and now you can snowboard and ski in Aspen. Isn't that right? It has been 20 years since snowboarders were allowed on Aspen Mountain following a big stink. Are they still not allowed, Tony? Is that what you're telling me? Is that what this is suggesting?
No, I think they are now. So this is. I'll read more. I'm just trying to find stuff as quick as I can.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They did.
But I remember snowboarders were only allowed like on certain runs, and they weren't allowed on the whole mountain. All that stuff.
Right. Aspen Mountain. Okay, so when you go to Aspen, there's Snowmass. They have another Ajax. I think I forget what they're called, but. Aspen Mountain, this sort of main mountain, they didn't allow snowboarding, but I think that they've been up. Anyway, that reminds me of what's happening with pickleball. Pickleball is viewed as, oh my God, tennis is great, but pickleball is noisy. It's, yet people want to play it, and communities are in this situation where they're eventually, going to have to, I think, relent,
I blame you.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, that's the stuff that has nothing to do with Trump, and I just thought it was interesting nonetheless. We try to do politics as well as other stuff. Now I will share with you a little something about, and I was extraordinarily surprised by this because to me, the love that the Trumps feel for their ladies is something special. Maybe it's a new ideal that we should all incorporate. And so when Don Jr. is caught kissing a glamorous Palm Beach socialite named Bettina Anderson during a brunch date that he had without his fiancée, Kimberly Guilfoyle, well, that raised a couple of eyebrows. He has been caught locking lips. This is a quote. I don't use the phrase locking lips myself, but I will read it if it is in the Daily Mail, and this is. Donald Trump Jr. has been caught locking lips with a Republican Palm Beach socialite, and it's not his fiancée, Kimberly Guilfoyle. The former president's son spotted canoodling. That's also a word I don't use, but I will quote it from the Daily Mail piece. With a glamorous it girl named Bettina Anderson. Bettina is 37. They had an intimate brunch date last month. And sources say the romance is on. And the talk of Palm Beach. There are pictures that show Don Jr.'s rendezvous with the model, influencer, and philanthropist at the Honor Bar located inside Palm Beach's swanky Royal Point Cana Plaza shopping center. She seemed totally smitten with Don, and he with her, the insider told Daily Mail. They looked totally relaxed. She wearing a white shirt tied off to show her midriff and wide leg pants. He in shorts and a t-shirt. I don't know what this means. I don't know how this is going to affect his relationship with his fiancée, but this is news. And there you see the pictures. If you're watching on YouTube, we're sharing with you these pictures of this Palm Beach socialite over brunch. Bettina Anderson is her name. Wow. It's, there's no love like new love. That's all I've got to say. I'm kind of moved.
Does that mean Kimberly Guilfoyle will be speaking less at Trump rallies now?
I don't know. She is a big part of the Trump scene. You're right. I don't know if she's going to be... I'm imagining that there's going to be a conversation. I wish for all of us the kind of love that the Trumps have from others. I just think that they do get incredible, no strings attached love. And that's enviable. I am... how are we doing? We've got a few minutes. This is very good. Okay. There was something else I want to mention. It doesn't have to do with Trump directly, although it does lead back to cases involving Donald Trump at the Supreme Court level. Can I share info with you on that? This is... I'm looking down because I'm trying to find my little... that's not loud enough. The
Mark Thompson
Yeah, we'll re-record that. A huge Supreme Court leak exposes that Chief Justice John Roberts strong-armed fellow Supreme Court judges into allowing him a key role involving Donald Trump cases. This is according to leaked memos out of SCOTUS. The conservative judge took the lead in March's case on whether states could remove the former president from their ballots. You remember if that was a big Supreme Court case for a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. You know, we talked about the fact that, you'll remember, I thought that was a bad thing, that I didn't think you should be allowed to take Trump off because you can play that game back and forth. You know, in red states you take Biden's name off or Kamala Harris's name off, whoever's top of ticket as the candidate. Anyway, the conservative judge took the lead in that case. Also, in the roll over the January 6th attack on the Capitol, Roberts demanded a unanimous decision from the bench, according to memos leaked to the New York Times. He also took charge of the case concerning the prosecution of those J6 rioters. He took control himself from Justice Sam Alito. After Alito was embroiled in a row about his wife flying the Stars and Stripes upside down from the House, that's when apparently Roberts moved in to take over. So again, this in leaked documents indicates that Roberts told colleagues they should take the case after an appellate court ruled that Trump did not enjoy presidential immunity for his role, alleged role anyway, in trying to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. And he made no secret of what he thought his colleagues should decide. Some conservatives wanted to delay a decision until after November's presidential election, but Roberts demanded an early decision and then insisted on writing that opinion himself. Again, this is all in leaked documents. In a case like this one, these are his writings, Roberts' writings, focusing on transient results may have profound consequences for the separation of powers and for the future of our republic, he wrote. Our perspective must be more far-sighted. This is a hammer blow to attempts at the judiciary to prosecute Donald Trump, as you know. And Roberts failed to secure that unanimity that he was demanding. He got a scathing dissent from Sonia Sotomayor. And, I mean, we saw what happened, though. The Supreme Court ruled to give Trump that immunity. But the degree to which John Roberts got involved, particularly when Alito was embroiled in those questions about the flag, it exposed the corruption of the court. There was a hold my beer moment where Roberts moves in and goes, okay, guys, this is what I want. I want total unanimity on this. And of course, as I say, he didn't get it. He demanded a ruling that congressional action would be needed for the constitutional ban on insurrectionists taking office to apply to the president. And that's a wild, wild notion. I mean, these are real carve-outs designed to protect Donald Trump, not only in the way of immunity, but also in the way of his ability to achieve the presidency, right? If you, enforce essentially the rule against insurrection, the rule against insurrectionists ascending to presidential office. I mean, that's a hard and fast line, right? You try to it's a Civil War thing, right? It was a post-Civil War thing. You don't want people who are trying to overthrow the Union getting into a position of power, and that's what this was. In any case, he wanted that constitutional ban on insurrectionists taking office to apply to the president. He wanted that ban overruled at the Supreme Court level. So, this applies to a bunch of people who are involved in one way or another. The tentacles of J6, as you're well aware, extend way beyond Donald Trump. But this, in the way of leaked documents, is something wild, and it's insanely appalling that this would happen. The Supreme Court, I would suggest, openly corrupt, and now you see, even in their judicial decisions, there's a lack of objectivity, there's a lack of fealty to the law, and there's a lack of keeping the process clean, keeping the process free of politics. It's again, the latest leak from the Supreme Court, which tells us something that we already knew, which is the court has an agenda. They are activist, radical judges who are in control of the most powerful institution in American life. And the reason I say that is because Congress can't pass any legislation and likely won't pass any legislation. Maybe this next go-round, the GOP takes both houses. That doesn't seem likely. But it would take that to maybe squeak by some kind of legislation, probably related to tax cuts if it's GOP. So the real decisions and the real law that's going to affect American life is all coming down at the Supreme Court level. That's just the way it is. So, fealty is a ding word, says Tom, and he's right. I do not have the ding with me either. We've really got to step up our remote drop game. That's the one thing we need to do, Tony. I feel like the applause needs to be re-recorded. That seems pretty light.
It's a bit low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing really bothers Tony. That's why I like Tony. Like, I live in a world of panic and anxiety. Tony lives in, it's a little low. Well, we record it. Not a big deal. He's not, nothing really bothers you.
There are some things, but yeah.
You're very,
Thanks, Tony.
You're very chill.
Have to
Anyway,
be.
I guess
This job,
that's it.
it can be very stressful if you're not
That's true.
calm.
You live in a stressful world.
Thanks, Tony.
If you're new here, we are wrapping up. We do 2 live hours every single Monday through Friday. And there is a specialness to this because we're joining you from the road today. I'm on the road. Kim's where she normally is. And I think it went okay. I mean, with this, the new remote rig worked out. So
spots where there was like a little electronic glitch, but most of the show, no problem at all.
good. Well, that's really good to hear. So
there's still some outstanding contributions to note.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wes, for a $5 super sticker. Always a supporter of the show. Really appreciate that. And Paolo Montero with a $5. Now, what is that, a Tony? Tony will know. Is that the R? What is that?
I'm not sure.
Thanks, Tony.
Everyone was worried about the New York Times Sienna Rasmussen and now Atlas Intel polls, but after this crazy guy, it's despair.
I think it's a Brazilian dollar.
Oh, that's wild.
Yep, that's what I was about to say. It looks like it's the Brazilian with Brazilian
Kim, how are
real,
you?
right? Is that what it's
Very.
called?
Oh, the real. Okay, real.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Very good. Everyone's worried about the New York Times Sienna Rasmussen and now Atlas Intel polls, but after this crazy guy, it's despair. Yeah.
That's the first time we've ever gotten
a
a Brazilian dollar, so that's pretty cool.
First of all, Paulo, thank you. We've never gotten a Brazilian dollar. Second thing I would say is if you're talking about the dude who tried to off the president, isn't that what he's talking about, you think, Kim? How do you decode what he's saying?
Yeah, after this crazy guy,
yeah. So it's truly wild. I mean, American political life, never crazier, and you add a second apparent assassination attempt, and yeah, I agree. It's absolute despair isn't a bad word. The lady Beatrice, why does this not surprise me? Junior raised by a habitual philanderer, and he himself philandering. Yeah,
right.
I mean, it's a. I don't know. Again, as I say, I'm not the relationship police. It's just saucy. It's juicy. I pass it on to you. They were in public, so it can be reported. It was reported publicly, so there you go. Again, I'm whatever you guys want to do. I mean, it's you want to mess around. You want to. Who knows what kind of arrangement they have? I always feel like we never know. But it does. It feels saucy and sassy, and for that reason, I like to report it. What can I tell you?
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Lady Beatrice, though. Appreciate that. Do you have anything else for me? I'm looking in the chat. So we're wrapping up here, and so what I was going to mention to you is two things. So we are on every day, 2 hours live, 2 to 4 in the East, 11 to 1 in the West, and I'm on the road all this week, and tomorrow and Wednesday, Kim will be helming the show solo, but she'll have David K. Johnston tomorrow, so that'll be a lot of fun. And we're looking forward to a great political season. I'll be back in California for next week completely. Harry Magnan, like father, like son, he says. The apple doesn't fall from the tree. Insert next cliche here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Harry. Yeah, it's true.
Oh, no. They say you didn't mention the Emmys. Did anybody watch the Emmys even?
Thank you, Mo Direct. I will mention the Emmys, and I would have my my little thing here, but I don't. Okay. Anyway, let me give you the deal on the Emmys. I did watch them, and I'd like to give you just a quick minute on the Emmys. The Emmys were... filled with shows, and I'll ask you whether you watch them. You watch The Bear at all, Kim? The Bear is a Hulu show. It's on FX too, I believe.
I don't have Hulu, but I really want to see that show.
It's also on FX. It's very celebrated. Shogun, it was a big winner, I think. And there was what was the other show? Shogun, The Bear, and one other did really well. Kind of there they are on stage. Now, Hacks. Thank you. Yeah, Hacks. I would say a couple of things about the Emmys, and I'll start with the following. I think a lot of people don't see these shows. They're not on networks that are easy to find sometimes. Hacks is on Max, okay? And Shogun was on another streamer, I don't know which, but not on a major network. And I mention that because it seems to me that increasingly the Emmys then are awarding shows that nobody has really seen. When I say nobody, the public is less up to speed on them than the people in that room. You know, the people in that hall, they've seen a lot of this work, and a lot of their work is really impressive. But I'd say that many people haven't seen these shows. Now, the Emmys themselves, they were kind of Hollywood on display in the very traditional way in which we've now seen Hollywood portrayed by so many, which is, it's the libs having their party where there was wokeism on display. And I have to say, and I'm a woke lib, it was a lot for me, man. It really was. So I think even if you have your tolerances broader than most, it just seemed as though every bit of political correctness was being checked in some box. That said, maybe that's important for society. I don't know. I mean, again, it's hard for me because I think I'm not in, what is a traditionally oppressed minority group. But it must be cool to see. I mean, I think maybe I could be. If things continue this way, I don't know how it works. But I would say that there was a quality of a parade of wokeism that if you're not on board, it might really kind of stress you even to the limits of lib tolerance.
I was just looking at the list of winners, and The Daily Show, which is absolutely not politically correct, took the Outstanding Talk Series award. So I don't know. I mean, maybe a little irreverence there.
Yeah, I mean, The Daily Show took. That's another thing. You can get into the actual categories of the Emmys. The Daily Show was up against, I believe. You'd have to look at the category, but I felt was it This Week Tonight was the with John Oliver won also. I think The Daily Show was for a daily talk show. Yeah, so hard to. I don't know. I don't know what define wokeism, says Rob. Yeah, I mean, this is where we get into it. It's part of a longer conversation. But I guess I would say the degree to which you see to it that traditionally ignored minorities, LGBTQ+, Latinx, these become prominently played up in the ceremony and the award show. Again, you want these communities to be recognized, but when you're sitting there, it can feel as though if you're listening to a 6-minute speech about the rise and finally the recognition associated with a certain minority group, and then there's another 7 minutes on it or whatever, it can feel as though you're being force-fed this. I come from a place which is sort of like, meh, I don't really care. I mean, like, I don't have I want everybody to have a legitimate shot and an equal shot. But I guess my point in mentioning it is, it does really feel like all those stereotypes of Hollywood that they talk about, the rise of wokeism and the intense nature of wokeism and the amplification of minority grievance. It felt like all of that was packed into 2.5 hours, men in bow ties and women in gowns. I mean, it was just a weird. I didn't know if it was a political message that was being communicated with some awards being sprinkled in between, or if it was an award show and it was a political message sprinkled in between. So that was my sense of it. I watched it. I wasn't taking notes on it or whatever. But I think that's a fair assessment from somebody who I have nothing against, the libs. As I say, I'm a woke lib myself. Bring it on. But I do tire, and I think you can overdo it. If everybody got up there and there's now you're getting into individuals who were parts of major shows that were award-winning or nominated for awards, and I haven't seen a lot of them, But they also, the last thing I'll say, and this is unrelated to wokeism and all that, is that increasingly you have major movie stars who are doing what? Television, streamers. So all of a sudden the Emmys go from this thing that has a bunch of people who are TV stars, and this is the old days. It was like there were TV stars and there were movie stars. Right. Now stars are stars, and they all want to do the streaming because they all have kids, but they also realize this is really the new feature film work is streaming. I mean, because people aren't going to the theaters in numbers that they were before. So if you want to evolve into this next bit of media, you want to be part of the streaming generation, and you want to do this work. That's why you see Jodie Foster in the crowd. That's why you see Steve Martin in the crowd. I mean, these are people who you associated with feature films, but now they're doing streaming. So those are my thoughts on the Emmys. Let me just see. I guess that's it. Okay.
Is that it?
I guess I didn't say anything more. I wanted to see if anybody else had.
Big shout out.
Yeah, big shout out to anything for me to comment on. Safe travels, Mark, says Luis. Thank you. I will miss you tomorrow, Kim, but I'm looking forward to. I will be watching the show, even though I will be traveling. It's a travel day, so
I've got Jefferson Graham. I've got David K. Johnston.
I'm telling you, you really have a good show tomorrow.
I'll miss you, but it's going to be good.
Yeah. I think it will be good. I'm excited about you. In your last conversation with Jefferson Graham, I think I got 200,000 views on our channel.
David K. Johnston, I think. Yeah.
David K. Johnston. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what I meant to say. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for putting up with the fact that we're on remote. It's a new thing, but we just we'll do it, as I say, today, and we'll do it at the end of the week, and then we're back in our normal studio on Monday. Thank you for all the support, all the Patreon, all the PayPal support. There are links to both under all our videos. And now the great voice of Shadoe Stevens to say goodbye.
I'm Shadoe Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Kim has the after party live next. Check it out. Until next time, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.